Hi everyone, my name is Terry Westwell, and if you're new here, or if you just need a reminder because it's been a while since I've done one of these videos, then this is my monthly wrap-up, where I'll discuss all of the books I've read this month. It is a spoiler-free zone, so if you haven't read any of the books, then don't worry, it is a safe space. I read 17 books this month, and before you go anywhere or say anything, that's nuts for me. I mean, I know that January has been exceptionally long, but I don't think I've ever read that many books in a single month before. It's rare that I would ever make it above 10 books, but this has been a month of being unwell and having terrible back pain, so I guess I just took advantage of that, and so we're 1 month into the year, and I'm already 23% of my way through my yearly reading goal, and I'm ahead by something like 11 books. If I keep at it, maybe I'll actually reach 100 books by the end of the year, which would be quite cool. So the first book that I read this month, my first book of 2025, was Quicksilver. Now, if you're on any sort of social media, which you're watching this video, so I assume that you have definitely heard of this book because it has been everywhere. Everyone was raving about this book, and to be totally honest with you, I was no different. I loved it. I was so happy that it was worth the hype. I rated it 5 stars. This is a romance fantasy. It's super easy to read, it's gripping, and it has a little bit of spice. It follows 24-year-old Ceres, who accidentally opens up a gateway to the Fae realm. She must navigate her way through a new world, which is in the middle of a war, bind herself to a mysterious warrior, and uncover her own hidden powers. This is enemies to lovers, it has an interesting magical element, fantastic characters, and even an adorable animal sidekick. Honestly, it's just everything I love about a tense and exciting romantasy. I think it's well worth the read. The next 2 books that I read were Unravel Me and Ignite Me, which is the second and third book in the Shatter Me series. I read the first one sometime last year, and I've just kind of been meaning to get around to the others. This is a YA dystopian series with an interesting magical system, a corrupt government, and a very strong romantic element. I think it's a great introduction to this sort of genre, especially for a young adult audience, although of course anyone can enjoy it. I would say that the writing is a little naive and kind of cheesy at times, but the storyline is really gripping and the characters are absolutely lovable. I do think that I enjoyed these books more than the first one, however, sometimes it did feel like the writing was slowly, progressively getting worse. That being said, I did rate it 3.75 and 3.5, and I think I need a little bit of a break before I continue on with the series. I then read Foxglove, which is the second book in the Belladonna series. It's a series set in the 19th century, following a woman that can't seem to die, as she works with Death himself to solve a murder. This is another YA book. I think I read the first one nearly a year ago now, and unfortunately I just don't think I enjoyed it quite as much. We are introduced to some more interesting characters and another murder, but I don't know, after a while it just felt like it got a little bit repetitive. That being said, I did think it was another fantastic ending, so I did rate it 3.75. This month I clearly started off intending to continue with series that I'd already started, because my next book was King of Pride, which is the second book in the King of Sin series. These are spicy contemporary romance books with a billionaire trope. They are like a standalone series, so although the books do all kind of go together, each one follows different characters in that same world or circle of friends. It's a super common way to write romance books, but I find it a little frustrating. I think I get overly invested in a set of characters, so it kind of pains me a little bit to have to move on to different ones in the next book. So for that reason, I do tend to wait quite a bit of time between reading these books. I did rate this one 3.75 again, which I seem to have rated quite a few 3.75 so far. I then read Phantasma, which I feel like has been recommended to me everywhere recently. It's kind of like a fantasy horror romance or a paranormal romance following a young necromancer in New Orleans as she finds herself in a hellish contest in order to save her sister. It has romance, deadly games, ghosts, and ghouls. Not to sound like a broken record, but I actually rated this one 3.75 stars as well. I really liked the characters, I really liked the story. I just kind of wish that there was more detail and it spent a little bit more time in the story. It was super fast paced and I think that the book could have been longer. Okay, so I'm just going to say it, but I also rated this next one 3.75. At the time, I did not see a pattern. A Touch of Darkness is a Hades and Persephone-inspired romance with a little bit of spice. Persephone finds herself in a contract with Hades and the terms are impossible to meet. It's enemies to lovers with a slightly darker theme. I did really enjoy it. I only really marked it down because at times Persephone could be really annoying and the writing could feel a little cringy, but now that my feelings have matured on it, I would probably rate it the full 4 stars. So to finally take a small step away from the very persistent star rating this month, I rated this next one 3.25 stars. The Cabin at the End of the World is a horror thriller centered around a small family in a remote cabin. The family's vacation is interrupted when a group of strangers appear, talking about the end of the world. I think my star rating for this was probably a little bit generous. There were elements that I did enjoy about it, and I thought that the overall premise was really interesting, but it mostly just boiled down to the fact that I didn't really like the writing style. I did actually watch the film a good couple of years ago, and I think that the film adaptation is way better. I then read The Hating Game, which Fee actually got me from my Amazon wishlist quite a while ago, so thank you again for that, Fee. This is a contemporary romance with a slow burn, lots of tension, and a little bit of spice. It follows Lucy and her nemesis and work colleague Joshua as they both fight for a new work promotion and their growing attraction to one another. I rated this one 4.25 stars. I really enjoyed it. I thought that it was easy to read and really funny. However, Lucy could be a little annoying and repetitive at times. My 10th book of the month, we are slowly getting there, was the Book of Asriel. It is a romantasy book that follows a morally grey FMC and a grumpy MMC, 2 natural enemies as they work together in the hopes of saving the world and all of the realms between. I rated this book 4.5 stars. I really don't know what I was expecting at first. I wasn't at all sold on the love interest. I did not like him, but the character development was great. I really enjoyed the narrative and I thought that it had fantastic world building. So despite my initial hesitations, I actually ended up loving the characters and everything that the relationship grew to. I was also really surprised with just how much was going on with this plot. Next was The North Wind. I really haven't seen or heard much about this book. I mean, I think I just picked it up in the supermarket one day and it's been sat on my shelf since, just waiting for me to get around to it. But I haven't seen much on social media about this book at all, which was a real shame. This is another Hades and Persephone Beauty and the Beast inspired book. It follows a woman, a survivor who's had a hard life, protecting her sister after the death of their parents, until one day the North Wind chooses her sister as his sacrifice. The book is definitely giving Hunger Games, ACOTAR, that sort of thing. I loved the imperfect characters and the interesting story, but I did find some plot holes and there were some moments where the spicy scenes were just a little bit cringy, and if it wasn't for those, I probably would have rated it a little higher than 4.5. Next was Serpent and Dove, and I really wanted to like this one, but unfortunately I rated it 2.75 stars. This romance fantasy is set in historical France during a war between witches and the church. In order to survive, a runaway witch hides in plain sight as she marries a chasseur who is sworn to the church. To be honest, I feel like it should have been quite obvious that this book wasn't going to be for me. I mean, I don't really like any sort of historical fiction. I'm not that big into witches, and I don't really like a marriage of convenience trope, so it's not too surprising. It was quite big on the whole burning of witches and women being property thing, so it just wasn't really my sort of vibe. However, if you do like those sort of tropes, then by all means give it a go. This next book has been on my radar now for quite some time, and who knew that I needed some apocalyptic romance in my life, because I really enjoyed this one. I rated Pestilence 4.5 stars. As you can imagine, this book follows Pestilence as he travels the earth, destroying humanity along the way, until Sarah one day shoots Pestilence in the efforts to stop him, only to discover that Pestilence can't be killed. He then takes her as his prisoner, but the longer they spend together, the more uncertain they are of their feelings towards each other. This book was really tense, and at times it was a lot darker and more graphic than I thought it was going to be. I really liked the character development. It was one of the things that really kept me gripped with this book, but I also thought it was really easy to read, really fast-paced, and had some spice. I think that due to the kind of theme of the overall book, it's going to be one of those that you either love it or hate it. Like a large percentage of readers out there, I also read Onyx Storm this month, which is the third book in the Empyrean series after Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. If you don't already know, this series follows Violet after she's forced to join the Rider Squadron in a war college. It has romance, powers, deadly games, dragons, and betrayal. It's a series that I've really loved from the beginning, and this one's no exception. I rated this one 5 stars. I think that the series is a great introduction to this sort of genre, and it's easy to get invested in the world. It's easy to read, and it's really fast-paced. This is another one that I feel like I've seen around quite a bit recently, but my 15th book of the month was Butcher and Blackbird. Sometimes I can be a little bit hesitant when it comes to popular book talk books, especially when it comes to any sort of spicy romance or dark romance recommendations. I don't know if it's maybe Credence that ruined it for me, or if I'm worried that things aren't going to live up to the hype, but I actually rated this one 5 stars. It's a dark romance that follows two people who share an unlikely hobby. They're both serial killers who like to unalive other killers. So when they meet, they propose an annual competition of sorts. I didn't expect to like this book anywhere near as much as I did. It was oddly kind of sweet and laugh out loud funny. I think despite the serial killer theme, the characters were extremely lovable. The book could have easily have been twice as long, but I did really appreciate the fast pace. Naturally, that then led me to Lights Out, which is another dark romance. This time, a woman's dark fascination leads her to a morally grey cinnamon roll masked stalker. I would say that although it might be recognised as a dark romance, it's definitely on the lighter side of things. It's really not that dark, but it is really funny and the characters are really lovable. It had a really simple story and it was really easy to read. It was actually kind of quite light-hearted while still having some of those darker elements. I did rate this one 4.5 stars, but I would say that it's probably more of like an introduction to any form of dark romance instead of jumping into something much darker like Haunting Adeline. Last but not least is Pucking Around. It's a hockey-themed romance. I think the second ever hockey-themed romance I've ever read, but it's a why choose with lots of spice and it does have some LGBTQ representation. I can't say that I've read many why choose, but I don't think it's for me. Like, good for you, good for her, but it was a lot. I liked it enough, and I did really like the characters, but there was just no reason that the book was as long as it was. I like a spicy book just as much as the next girl, but if I'm going to be reading a book that's this long, I would like some form of plot or storyline to go along with it, so I rated this one 3.5 stars. So given how many books I've read, I've had a fantastic month, a great start to the year. I might actually have to readjust my reading goal. So as for what I'm reading next month, apart from book club, I have no clue. I never plan what I'm reading, which I probably should because I just tend to blindly panic and choose one at random. I'm a terrible mood reader. Like, sometimes if I've read a book that I've really enjoyed, I will try and find similar books to keep that mood going, but other than that, I usually have no clue what I'm doing. Maybe I should try and do a monthly TBR, but then I might just feel bad if I don't complete it. I hope you enjoyed this January reading wrap up, and if you do have any book recommendations, then please let me know, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!